Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Jazakumullahu khairan for joining us again for the second part of tonight's conference, Steps to Allah, organized by Islamic Network. Jazakumullahu khairan for all the work that they've put into preparing this conference for us. Without further ado, we're going to go straight into our next lecture. Our next lecture is by Ustadh Asim Khan. Ustadh Asim Khan will be talking about the title. His lecture is titled Addictions. Ustadh Asim Khan is the Imam of Redbridge Islamic Center, and he's a senior research fellow at the Muslim Research and Development Foundation. So without further ado, Ustadh Asim Khan, Jazakumullahu khairan.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Brothers and sisters, I want to start by sharing a story with you. Now, it's up to you if you want your children to be here during this lecture, because the nature of the topic is somewhat sensitive, and I will try my best to use wording that is as appropriate as can be for a younger audience, but I'm letting you know now that the topic is going to be somewhat sensitive. So, to begin with a story that one of my teachers told me. He heard this story directly from the person concerned. There's a man, a brother, who lived in a Muslim country, and he suffered from a very bad habit. And one night, when everyone was asleep in his house, he awoke, not wanting to disturb his wife. He got up in a way that was secretive. Then he went to one of the rooms where he keeps his computer. And he began to watch the things that he was addicted to. Now he thought he was all alone in that room. It was in the middle of the night. However, he wasn't all alone. He noticed someone moving in the corner. He turned around and he saw that it was his 4-year-old daughter. She had been standing there looking at her father for some time now. He didn't know how long. He was shocked. He froze. And before he could say anything, his daughter spoke and she said, "Shame on you, Daddy, shame on you." And then, before he could say anything, she walked out of the room and went back to her bedroom. The brother was so embarrassed that he began to cry. He broke down. And as he's crying, he heard the adhan, because he was living in a Muslim country. It was a time of Fajr. And he said to himself, you know what, I should go to the masjid. He's crying and he's making wudu. And all he can hear in his mind are the words of his daughter, "Shame on you, Daddy, shame on you." He makes his wudu, he goes to the masjid. He's praying and he's crying, he's sobbing. When he finishes his salah, one of the musallis notices him in his distraught circumstance, leans over and asks him, "Brother, is everything okay?" He says, "No, everything is not okay." He said, "This is the first time in 20 years I am praying to Allah." It's morning time now and he goes to work. When he goes to work, his colleagues notice that he's not himself. They ask him, "What's the matter?" He doesn't respond. He keeps himself to himself. He turns his mobile phone off. He doesn't want to speak to anyone. He keeps hearing the words of his daughter in his head, "Shame on you, Daddy, shame." Now he's about to come home and he's dreading seeing his wife, worried that perhaps his daughter has told her what she saw in the night time. Now this is not a made up story. When he goes home, he opens the door, his wife rushes towards him and starts shouting. She says, "Where have you been? I've called you more than 20 times today." He makes some excuse about his phone, and then she says, "Sit down." She sits him down and she says, "Look, today I collected our daughter from school. She came home, she said she wasn't feeling very well. She went to sleep, she slept for a long time. I went upstairs to wake her up and she was still. She wasn't breathing. I shook her. She wouldn't wake up. I called the ambulance. I called you. The ambulance came. The paramedic said she's been dead for more than an hour. I tried to call you. Where were you? The brother now, his world is turned upside down. The next day, he's burying his 4-year-old daughter. He holds her in his arms. He climbs into the grave and he's about to place her in there. As he places her in position, he smiles to himself. Through the tears, he smiles. And one of his friends notices that he smiled. A few days later, his friend phones him up. He says, listen, Akhi, there's something that's been bugging me. Something that I can't get out of my mind. Why did you smile when you buried your daughter? Why did you do that? He said, the reason I smiled is because in that moment I realized why Allah has sent this beautiful girl into my life. He had sent this girl into my life to give me a second chance, to make me realize how far away I was from Allah. And it was only because of her coming into my life that I ended up praying to Allah after 20 years. Brothers and sisters, this is one story. I can give you many more stories. I want to start by giving you a piece of advice. This type of addiction, it needs to stop. You have to realize, brothers and sisters, and by the way, sisters are included in this. In a recent survey, they said in this country, 1 in 3 women watches these filthy things at least once a week. 1 in 3 women. You have to realize that you are destroying your souls with your own eyes. You are killing every sense of spirituality that you have when you watch these things. Have you any idea the way it affects you? People that are addicted to these things, a guy, he doesn't see a woman walking past. He doesn't see another respectable human being. He sees a piece of flesh that he objectifies. You start checking out every person and everything. You have no respect for anyone anymore. It could be even a family member. You can't control your gaze anymore. You look once, you look twice. You don't even care if someone sees that you are checking somebody out. You can't help yourself. You're killing yourself when you watch these things. Innocence has been robbed from you. You stand in salah, you can't shed a tear because you've been plowing this filth into your soul. And then you ask, Shaykh, how do I get khushu' in my salah? Seriously, what planet are you living on? You watch these things and you want to have khushu' in your salah. Seriously, how can that be the case? It needs to stop. You have to stamp this habit out of your life. Now I want to share with you how rampant viewing these things is in the world that we live in. Did you know that these sites, they have more visitors than Netflix, Amazon and Twitter combined? That the number of visitors they get is second only to YouTube. They said that for every 4,000 movies made in Hollywood, 11,000 are made in the porn industry. One site boasts of getting 7,000 visitors every second. They said in this country, a third of all youngsters will have seen some indecent image or video by the age of 10. A third. You know what that means? It means that your child that you send maybe to an Islamic school, who's come from a good home, is a very high chance that his friend or her friend is going to show them something and say, have you seen this before? Look at this. That's what it means. The scale of the problem makes us realize that it is a war. You are at war with this fitna. Why do people become addicted? Behavioral psychologists, they say there's a number of reasons. Of them, sometimes it's a symptom of a greater problem. Like a person is running away from something in his past. You've made mistakes, something traumatic may have happened to you in your past. And the way you are dealing with it is by turning to these types of guilty pleasures, impulses. Now, subhanAllah, some people, they try to justify it to themselves. They say, well, I'm not actually harming anyone. I'm not harming anyone when I watch these things. What's so bad about it? The classical liberal argument. If it's not harming anyone, why should it be haram? Or maybe you justify it in another way. You say, well, if I watch these things, at least it will stop me from falling into zina itself. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Whatever you justify it, however you justify it, you need to realize that this is it is gutting your soul. It is killing your love and reverence of Allah. And you are becoming an animal. And you are losing your humanity because of it. What should we do? How can you help someone who is suffering from such addictions? First and foremost, the first step to tackling addiction is to accept that you have a problem. Did you know the NHS said that in this country, 2 million people suffer from some form of addiction? 2 million people. The first step to change is to accept that you have a problem. Stop justifying it. Stop ignoring it. Accept it. Akhi, ukhti, you have a problem. You know the difference between Iblis, a shaitan, and our father Adam alayhi salam. One of the main differences is that Iblis was in denial, whereas Adam accepted his mistake. When Iblis refused to bow down to Adam alayhi salam, and Allah asked him, what prevented you from bowing down إِذْ أَمَرْتُكَ, when I ordered you? قَالَ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. He said, I'm better than him. You made me from fire. You made him from dust, from dirt. Logically speaking, he has a point. But he's just covering up his arrogance, which is the real reason. Adam alayhi salam told not to eat from the tree. فَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةِ. Don't go near this tree. Allah told him clearly. But when he fell into the sin, what did he say? They both said, قَالَ رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. They said, oh, our master, no doubt about it, we have wronged ourselves, and if you don't forgive us and have mercy on us, we will be of the losers. There's no denial. Just raising the hand and saying, Allah, I made a mistake. This is the first step to recovery. The second step is to find a moment where you are by yourself. Pray 2 rak'ah and start to speak to Allah. Start to confide in Allah. Start to complain to Allah. Have a conversation with Allah. This is the way of the prophets. When Ya'qub alayhi salam, he was torn apart because of losing his son Yusuf. He said, قَالَ إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. He said, I only complain and confide of my pain and my sorrow to Allah. That is how he vented his frustrations. That is how he sought to get inner peace, by speaking to Allah. How many of us have bothered to speak to Allah? Allah said, إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Allah said, when my slave asks about me, I am close. I am ready and waiting to listen to my slave when he wants to speak to me. But how many of us have bothered to speak to Allah? Number 2, speak to Allah. Tell Him, Allah, I'm struggling with this. Allah is crazy. So much temptation. I don't know how to control myself. Allah, I need you. And number 3, make drastic lifestyle changes. You need to reflect. What happens to me before I end up doing this disgusting sin? What is it? What are the precursors? Is it a time? If I look at my life and I say, you know what, I end up doing this sin usually in the evenings, then you know what? Perhaps you should have a self-imposed curfew. After 9 p.m. is Wi-Fi free moment in my life. I'm not even gonna bother checking any social media, anything after 9, because I know if I do, one thing leads to another and I end up doing this sin. This is how Allah empowered us to conquer shaitan. When He said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la tattabi'u khutuwati shaitan. Believers, don't follow the footsteps of shaitan. He leads you down a dark alleyway. He takes you step by step. You need to think about what are the steps. Maybe it's a place that when you're all alone in this place, that's when you end up doing this sin. If that is the case, tell yourself, I'll only have screen time when I'm around other people or when other people can walk in on me. You may need to make drastic changes. But the question is, are you prepared to make those changes? That's step number 3. Drastic lifestyle changes. And lastly, you need to make constant dua to Allah. It's going to take time. It's going to be difficult. But you know who can make it happen? Allah can make it happen. And I have one dua I want to share with you. This dua I give you free of charge, okay? No charges. You know, some people, they make ta'weed and they ask for money. We're not into that kind of business. Free dua for you. This dua is taken from Surah Al-Hujurat, adapted from a verse inside Surah Al-Hujurat. Repeat it after me to yourself. Allahumma habbib ilayna al-iman. Allahumma habbib ilayna al-iman. وزينه في قلوبنا وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان وجعلنا من الراشدين وجعلنا من الراشدين. Say Ameen. What does this dua mean? You said, Oh Allah, make faith beloved to me. Beautify it in my heart. Make me detest disbelief, immorality, and disobedience. And make me of those who have direction in life. Ameen. What a beautiful dua. Make this dua regularly in your sajda. In fact, my last tip is that whenever you pray now, extend your sajda by just a few moments. And in those moments, make this dua and any other duas like it. Make it for yourself, make it for your family, make it for the ummah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rid us of such filth from our communities. Ameen. May Allah purify our hearts and make us decent, moral people. Ameen. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين فجزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم.
جزاكم الله خيرا Ustadh Asim for a very, very enlightening, very informative talk. Just going to very quickly summarize those 5 main points that he mentioned, just to give us a reminder. The first step is to accept the fact that you have an issue. Stop being in denial about it. The second step is have a solitary conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So find a moment when you're on your own and have a conversation with Allah, admit to Him your faults, admit to Him the problems, and speak to Him. Third step was to make drastic lifestyle changes. For example, if you find the issue is you're using a smartphone and this smartphone is your access point to this material, perhaps change and use a not so smartphone. The fourth step was to make constant dua, such as the dua that Ustadh Asim just repeated for us. And the fifth piece of advice was to extend your sujood, and in that make your dua as well.